David Paul Meyer. You're the director of The Daily Show. Now, Trevor Noah left the show towards the end of 2022, and since then, the show cycled through a number of guest hosts and also correspondents hosting the show. What has it been like adapting to the different personalities and comedic styles of the rotating hosts?
Well, it's definitely it doesn't get boring here with all the talent that passes through, and I think where we're at now with our news team hosting, so obviously John and then Jordan Klepper and Desi Leidick, Michael Costa, Ronnie Chang, uh, Dulce Sloan's hosted a couple weeks ago, and it's been really interesting to see how they approach the script and how they perform it, and just sort of learning their rhythms of their performance style. And I will say, before that we had that guest host run where it was a different guest host each week, and that almost, to be honest with you, it got me in that mindset of, having worked with Trevor for many years and sort of day in day out working with him. That transition to the guest hosts kind of in a way prepared me for what we're doing now with John on Mondays, but then the other members of the news team hosting on the other shows. So each person has their own style. Luckily with the correspondents, a lot of them I have worked with over the years from just being at the show. So to be honest, John was the person who was the newest for me, because I had not previously worked with him up until when he came in February. So that's been very exciting and a real thrill to work with him and learn, how he approaches the work and see it up close and up front. It's been really exciting. And with the other correspondents, just continuing building on what we've been doing over the last several years that we've all been here together.
As you mentioned, Jon Stewart has returned to the show on a part-time basis this year for the election year. How did that come about? Him returning to the show.
I mean, it was just a big surprise. One day they had us all there on all hands, and he literally came out of the wings, and it was like, surprise. So that was, in terms of how it came to be from my side, that's how I understand how it came to be. But yeah, it was super exciting. That was quite a kind of surreal day, to be honest with you, when it was announced when he came out to show us that he would be coming back here to do shows. And it's been, like I said, seeing his mind works is incredible. I think one thing I always notice, having now worked with him now in a few episodes, is John is always doing the script that is in the prompter, or performing the script that they had written, but you can see how his mind, how brilliant he is, because it's almost as if he's in parallel performing another script in his head, and he'll feel the moment out. He's so focused on the moment and the performance and what he's saying and doing and what the audience is, how they're reacting or anticipating how the home audience might react, that you can feel that he's sort of melding together the script and his internal John dialogue into something really special. And that has been like a real cool thing to observe.
With so much change on the show over the last year and a half, has the typical Daily Show day, really changed from a directing standpoint in the control room, or from that perspective, is it kind of a well-oiled machine at this point?
It's definitely a well-oiled machine, but it's a well-oiled machine that's used to every day being different. So depending on the news, depending on who's now hosting the show, depending on who else is going to be on the show that day, you can see each day kind of having its own unique flavor and each episode having its own unique elements to it. So like when John's show, his first show back in February, he did a whip with all the correspondents, and that was really fun because we had basically a on location chat with all of them in different parts of, I guess it was a diner or something, I think, that they were, and just kind of that choreography and the writing of the jokes and how to execute it in the studio space was a lot of fun. So that was one day. And then every day there's like any day there's a chat with, because it's very much about the news team. They chat with each other a lot more now. It's not just one host at the desk. You almost always see somebody else on every episode doing something. And so because of that unique sort of connection between host and correspondent, every day has its own different thing that we like to do. And then the other thing that we've been doing more as well on the show is music. We had Vampire Weekend on the week that their most recent album came out about a month ago, and they had 14 performers. So they had the band members, they had an 8-person choir, they had a sitar player, they had a DJ, so a producer who was performing. So that was certainly not a same old situation. That was very unique. And so I think it's a nice mix of, you're always going to have the person there with that over-the-shoulder graphic commentating and satirizing the news, but visually we try to interject unique elements and interactions that makes each episode feel authentic to itself.
Now, this is an especially big year for The Daily Show, since 2024 is a presidential election year. What's the atmosphere like on the show during a really intense political period?
I mean, it's definitely buzzing here every day, and there's always the sort of march towards the election day that's happening, and I think there's just an extra layer of engagement just throughout the day. I mean, just from the standpoint of the fact that the show is going on the road for both conventions. So we'll be in Milwaukee for the RNC in July, and then we'll be in Chicago for the DNC in August. And just basically bringing the show on the road and coming up with a set for the road, and how to make the show in this location, how to make the show in that location, how do we get people into the convention and doing pieces on the ground there. That is a whole operation that has to be worked on well in advance. We've been working on it for quite a while now. And that is all happening on top of the fact that, like, hey, Monday through Thursday, we also have to put an episode of television on the air. So you definitely find, things are in overdrive here. You're either working on the show that day or something for next week, or the special thing that John wants to talk about coming up, or the convention coverage and what we're going to do there. So yeah, it's definitely things are abuzz.
And the show got to celebrate winning the Emmy for Best Talk Series earlier this year. It was supposed to be in September, but of course the strikes delayed that until January. What was that experience like, winning that? What were your thoughts going through your head, as when the show was announced as the winner?
I mean, I just immediately remember being just so pumped and excited. I mean, what a journey. I've talked about it on these panels before. Trevor and I go back to 2008. So it felt like a really great thing that the show could share in as a whole. And all the people who went up on stage are such an important, all the writers and the producers and, all the members of the crew and everybody who had participated, we all kind of shared in that win together. And that was really special. And I really felt like a part of that, of the Daily Show team. And that was amazing. And then, also simultaneously, there was a special sort of arc for, I think, Trevor and I, and what we had gone through as friends and colleagues and working together even before the Daily Show was a reality for us. It was great. I was touched, definitely was like feeling a million, all great emotions, but a bunch of them at once, to the point where, like, when I was like hugging Trevor backstage and trying to say something, I couldn't even think of the words to say, but we looked at each other. We knew, like, it was one of those moments where you're like, you honestly didn't have to say anything, because it was just a great culmination of a lot of things. And then, just being happy with all the people that we're in the office with every day, and getting to celebrate with people like that, people like Jen Flans, our showrunner, and seeing her and how she had gone from doing the show with John to now doing it with Trevor. And, like, I think all of us, like, really felt like, more than anything, this was like a really special team moment that we all got to share in together. Yeah, Elise Terrell, who's another producer, like she and I go way back here, and I remember seeing her, how happy she was, and seeing how happy like Brittany Raddick, who I work with, and Jocelyn Kahn, all these folks who work at the show, getting to see them celebrate backstage was like its own sort of celebratory thing, to see how people experienced it as well as how I was experiencing it. Seeing Trevor experience it, it was truly it was awesome.
Well, I want to congratulate you for your work on the show, for the Emmy, and everything that's to come with the election year. Knock on wood, everything goes smoothly, as smoothly as things can go in American politics these days. So thank you so much for talking with us, and I'll talk to you a little later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Daniel.
Luke Korem, you directed the documentary Milli Vanilli about the infamous sort of music duo who turned out to be lip syncing their music. But of course, there was more to their story and more people involved in their story than meets the eye. What got you interested in this story?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm a child of the '90s, and Milli Vanilli is, something that has made an indelible mark on pop culture. And I remember the VH1 Behind the Music episode, of course. And I remember one night I just kind of went down a rabbit hole looking at Milli Vanilli, and I saw this video of Fab Morvan at the Moth sharing his story. And then at the end, he sang, and he had this beautiful voice. And I thought, wait a minute. I thought these guys were like talentless hacks. Like, why would you ever agree to do this? And that just led me down this path where I came to find out that most of us know the headline of Milli Vanilli, but very few of us actually know the story. Most people want to laugh at these guys and make them out to be a joke and not think about the fact that they were part of this giant machine that sold this lie. And so I really wanted to dive into that and also show the human side of these two guys who were just, early 20s when this whole thing happened.
And how did you end up connecting with Fab Morvan and getting to tell his story in this film?
It took me a year. I kept writing to him because he's had a lot of people reach out to him, and I was very persistent. And eventually, he agreed to meet with me, and we had a couple meetings. And it came down to a trust factor. I told him, look, I want to tell an objective portrait, so I'm gonna bring everybody in and ask them for their side of the story, and I need you to be comfortable with that. Of course, he's the spine of it, but there are conflicting narratives in this story. And ultimately, he just said, I see that you want to tell the full story and the truth. And he went along with it and agreed.
And how do you balance sort of this kind of story where there are conflicting narratives and sort of different points of view about, what happened, how they happened? What's that process like as a director?
Well, we did a lot of, investigating into it. But some things that there are no record of, you ultimately have to let the camera show the audience. The camera doesn't lie. And I think that audiences, when they watch, they hear different sides of the story. For instance, did Rob and Fab knowingly go along with this from the beginning, or were they kind of tricked into it? That is debatable. We have people say that the Grammys were paid to allow Rob and Fab to lip sync. People who are very at the center of this. And what we did is we allowed people to share their side. And I think that the audience appreciates that. They appreciate when you don't force one side. And I had no horse in the race. I just wanted to tell a well-rounded portrait.
And with Rob having passed away quite some time ago, like how difficult was it to get his perspective into the film and really make him a part of it too?
Yeah, that was paramount. Absolutely. And we were very fortunate. We tracked down some audio. He did an interview about 30 days before he died. And he was in a drug rehab clinic, completely sober, and did this interview in which he spoke candidly about his life. And that became our way, and including to all the archive that we discovered, that became our way to bring his voice alive and his spirit alive in the film. And you really get to hear his side of it. So it's a dual story of Rob and Fab. And without that, the film would not be what it is.
And having, being a child of the '90s, as you said, being young when this scandal was taking place, I'm sort of around the same age. So I was also, picking this up in sort of the background radiation of pop culture. What surprised you about it coming to this story now, investigating it as an adult and a filmmaker?
I think the way the media handled it, when you look back at it, there's two guys who barely speak English, who at the end, when the scandal erupted, the media only went after them. When there's this entire machine, Arista Records, run by the Clive Davis, right? They were not just a one-hit wonder. They were the number one or two act for Arista Records that year. They sold 30 million singles, 10 million albums. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, which the label themselves took. And yet, when everything fell apart, no one cared about those people. Everyone just said, no, it's these two guys that are ultimately responsible, which they're culpable, but in no way are they the only ones. They did not even come up with the idea. There's a producer behind this who had done this before with another band. And so that blew my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. So all those people we don't remember in history. We just remember Rob and Fab.
And has working on this affected the way you look at pop music in general, the way you look at contemporary pop music, and maybe who's behind that, and what the kind of inner workings are?
Well, I've always been interested in how the sausage is made. As a filmmaker, you wanted to go behind the scenes of things. But at the end of the day, pop music is entertainment, and we accept that more today. TikTok, etc. And that's what makes this story so absurd. Is at the time, and people literally were smashing their records. Like these guys, like people were burning Milli Vanilli things. They were sued by people for class action lawsuits because people idolized them. It's preposterous. And so I've always known pop music. I think most people know that it is an illusion, and we accept it as such. But I think the deception that went involved with this, and the anger and vitriol that was involved, we've never seen, and I don't know if we ever will again.
And it's sort of in the tradition of these portraits that we've seen in recent years of these scandalous figures who we're now learning to see in a more empathetic way, whether it's Britney Spears, or Pam Anderson and Tommy Lee, or the OJ trial, or anything like that. Where do you feel like we've developed kind of a more savvy, and also a little bit more empathy for what people go through who are in the public eye like this?
I would hope so. I mean, part of the challenge in making this film was to overcome people's bias, because a lot of people said, "Oh, I know that story," "Oh, those jokers," But a lot of people, when they watch this film, cry because then they're like, "I did not understand what was going on." And also, what makes these guys different is they didn't commit a crime. Like, what they did was agree eventually to lip sync, and someone handed them the keys to fame, and they said, "Okay, that's it." Right? So like, there was no big crime here, yet one of them lost his life because of this. And I think that's what makes this story, and that's what made it so difficult getting people to sit down with us. Clive Davis, refusing. The Grammys, who, like I said, we have people on record saying they were paid, and they were like, "We want nothing to do with Milli Vanilli." They wouldn't participate. Like, people run from this story, not just because of the part it makes in pop culture, the mark it made, but because the person lost his life.
And being that this is a story that touches on so many touchy subjects and relationships in the industry, how difficult was it to get the people who did participate in the documentary to sit down with you?
Extremely difficult. Everybody who was involved with this had been hurt. The real singers, I really wanted them to be on. This guy Charles Shaw, for instance, who raps "Girl, You Know It's True," he was kicked to the curb, kicked out of the band after the first song. So what's wild is "Girl, You Know It's True" is rapped by one guy. He's put out of the band, and another rapper steps in and raps the rest of the album. And like, no one even knows that, right? Like, it's insane. And also the racial aspect of it. We worked a lot with our executive producer Hanif Abdurraqib on this to make sure we really nailed it. These were Black artists that were exploited mostly by white producers. And you can't deny that part of the story. And we wanted to make sure that was shown. There's Blackface by Howard Stern. There's a sketch that he did when like these guys were just like torn to shreds, and everybody laughed and thought it was okay. So really, when I approached everybody who had been hurt by this, I just said, "Look, I want your side. That's it. I just want your side, and you tell me your truth." And people really respected that,
And did the music rights prove to be challenging, given that some of the subjects in the film control those rights?
I think producing this film was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, because the music master rights were owned by, I guess you could say, the villain in the film, Frank Farian, the producer. So he had to sign off and say it was okay for us to even make this film. And then Clive Davis, of course, head of Sony. So yes, the challenges were immense. We actually started making this film and we were 8 or 9 months in without the music rights approved. I'm very thankful to our partners, MRC, who backed the film. They knew eventually I'd get them, but that in itself was quite the feat.
And you were nominated for International Documentary Association Award for Best Music Documentary. What was that recognition like, and what's it like to put all that hard work in and to see that kind of concrete recognition?
Yeah, it meant so much because, people hear Milli Vanilli and they just dismiss it, and to know that people saw it, especially like the IDA, I never would have dreamed we would have gotten an IDA, nomination. I just didn't think that it would be their cup of tea, I guess you could say. But then they watched it and realized the art in it, and the humanity in it. And this is a very visceral story. And, just to see the way audiences have responded, those who watch it are just, time and time again, we're hit up by people who said, I had no idea what I was getting into. It's very fun, of course, but then it gets quite tragic as it goes on. And I'm just thankful that audiences have really resonated with the story.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your work on the film and the recognition it has received so far and may continue to receive, knock on wood there too. So thank you so much for talking with me, and we'll see you again in a little bit.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Randy Zisk, you directed Mr. Monk's Last Case, which brought back the title detective almost 15 years after the series ended its run. Now, back when you directed the series finale, did you anticipate that you'd eventually get to revisit these characters in this way?
No, I don't think any of us knew that we would come back and do it, like you said, almost 15 years later.
And how did you end up coming back on board for this film? Like, how did it come together?
Michael Sluchin, who was at Peacock, who runs Peacock, was on the original Monk when we were at USA, and he was with us the whole way. So he always liked the show and talked to Andy Breckman, who created the show, wrote the show, and they bought the movie. Andy wrote it, and he and David Hoberman and Tony Shalhoub and I produced it, and it came together. But it was really fun for us after 14 years to get the cast back together, the team back together, and it was a blast.
And were there any challenges in reassembling that team, in terms of scheduling or commitments, where everybody is, at this point in their lives and careers?
No, it came together pretty easily. Tony had just finished, Marvelous Miss Maisel, so he was free to shoot last summer when we did it, and Ted Levine, Jason, Trailer, everyone was so excited to do it. It came together pretty well and pretty easily.
These days, the door is never fully closed when it comes to revisiting shows and characters. We've seen that a lot in terms of revivals and reunions and renewals after many years. What do you think about those opportunities? Having directed so much TV in your career, to get a chance to kind of revisit these characters that you've spent so much time with and loved.
Yeah, I mean, I think even though it's called Monk's Last Case, there's always the door open, like you said. I think we'd all really enjoy doing another one. We had such a good time. It really felt like we didn't skip a beat, which I know you hear those things a lot, but it really felt like when the first day of shooting, we did a scene in the airport where pretty much all the characters were back together, and it was when they met for the first time in the show. We chose to do that on the first day, and it really was like 14 years ago that when we were together shooting. The heart and the humor kind of came through in the same way the tone of it came through. So yeah, hopefully there'll be more down the road.
And tone is especially challenging. One thing that really struck me and impressed me about the film is that you're dealing with, a lot of humor, as always on the show. But you're also dealing with very serious subject matter, Monk's mental health and his contemplating suicide. Like, how challenging is it to kind of walk that line and find that right balance for the show and for the film?
That's a good question, because it was such a serious matter, such a serious subject, and a departure for what the show was for the 8 years that the show ran. But I think we wanted to make sure that we didn't just do episode 126, that we really did something that was different and that was unique to the series. being a movie. So I thought Andy walked the line so well in the script, and we just, we're careful. There's always that line with the subject matter of the show to begin with, that we want to play it real, and we always try to play our comedy real. I mean, obviously some of these things are a little bit, bigger than life, but for the most part, keeping it honest and real. And like you said, the subject matter was something that was very serious, and we wanted to keep it that way and respect that. And there's Tony Shalhoub is just so special when he can play comedy, he can play drama, and does it so well. And really, he kind of did the tightrope and making sure that it stayed in that area, which was genuine and real. And I mean, working with him is just such a treasure.
And working with Tony Shalhoub, how did you work with him to find this character again after more than a decade away, or was it kind of like riding a bike? He jumped right back into Monk, right back into those shoes.
It's funny to say, because one of the lines in the show is, it's like riding a bike, and Hector Elizondo says, "Oh, good." He says, "No, it's hard," but no, this was like riding a bike. I mean, Tony, we certainly talked a lot over the years. He's a good friend, and we talked coming up to the show about the tone of it, but he just got back into it so quickly, and to me it seemed effortless. To him, I don't, you'd have to ask him, but he makes it look effortless. And also, he and Andy Breckman, just the way that they relate between the writer and actor is really special, and they just kind of get each other, so it makes the directing much easier.
And Andy Breckman, working with him again. In addition to Monk, you worked with him on the Netflix series The Good Cop. So you have a lot of experience working with him. What is that creative partnership like?
We've done 3 or 4 shows together, and it's really been wonderful. We both love comedy. I mean, Andy goes back Saturday Night Live and different shows that he's written and worked on. And there's just a mutual, we just seem to like always, we're always in sync. And we just I have so much respect for his writing and the way that he puts together his characters and his storylines. And we have fun on the set. We laugh on the set the whole time. I want him to be on the set as much as he can, just because we just, knock around ideas while we're doing it. And he and David Hoberman and Tony Shalhoub and I, the 4 of us, have done, so many of these episodes and this movie that we're all really close. And even when we get in the editing room, I feel like anybody can jump in the editing room and make changes, and it works for all of us. We've really had a good relationship since the beginning.
In the episode, there's a really memorable shot, a really moving shot of Monk accompanied by the souls of the victims whose cases he solved over the years. How did that come together? It's such a climactic moment.
Oh, thanks. Well, I remember seeing a shot where I believe it was the Raiders of the Lost Ark, but there was like a grassy knoll, and with the cameras low and the people are behind it, you only see one person coming over. But then as the camera raises, you start to reveal, in this case, 150 people behind him who are following him. And I just always, that image, when I read it for the first time, that was the image that kind of came to mind, that you want to see him by himself. And then all of a sudden, see there were 1 or 2 people behind him. And then it became 10 people and 20 people, and grew to the whole. Every case he solved in the 8 years of the show. So that was kind of what was behind that setup and that shot.
And have you gotten a lot of reaction from fans of the show? How they've received this new mystery after kind of years away?
Yeah, they seem to really like it. I mean, like I said, it was a bit of a departure, so it was kind of scary going into it, because we hadn't done one dealing with this serious a subject matter before. But the response has been really good. People seem to they love the character. I mean, all the characters, but certainly Monk is a character that really kind of reaches a lot of people. And it's the show that we always wanted to do for everybody. We wanted to do a show that kids can watch and their parents and their grandparents. So we kind of felt like this hit all those, which is what we aim for.
And you mentioned being open to more Monk in the future, and of course, this film leaves the door open for that. You know, since TV is so different nowadays, and you took a somewhat different approach to this film with this serious subject matter, how would you envision kind of a different side of Monk, or a kind of updated version of him going forward?
Well, that's the thing about Monk is he's not a very updated character. He's one of the few characters that doesn't walk around with a cell phone or with high tech anything. I mean, he's kind of never really used any of that. So it's a bit timeless in a way, and most of his references go back to the 70s and 80s. So he's not really very. It's a character that we purposely haven't made very hip or trendy. So I think he would probably stay the same. I think his halcyon days were probably COVID, because he kind of felt like everybody was going through what he was going through. And I don't think as the times change, he will change very much. I think he'll always be who he is.
And the movie was nominated for a couple of Critics' Choice Awards. Tony Shalhoub was nominated for a SAG Award. How does it feel when a project you've worked on receives, recognition from media and industry, or especially a performance you've directed?
Yeah, it's so nice to see that the audiences and the fans of the show have really gotten behind it. It's really rewarding, and it's great to know as the team, puts it all together and finishes the show, that it's received well. So it's an honor.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your work on the film, and on your work on Monk in the past, and fingers crossed your work on Monk in the future. And thank you so much for talking with me about it.
Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate it. It's nice to be here.
Olatunde Osunsanmi, you're director and executive producer of Star Trek Discovery, which is ending its run this spring after 5 seasons. You've been with the show since season 1. How difficult was it to say goodbye to it?
Oh, it's incredibly difficult, particularly when you have as much fun behind the scenes as we did, and you grow these relationships. And it had 5 seasons, but it was like 7 years of work. And some of us didn't have kids, some of us didn't have wives or husbands, and the family that you go on this adventure with multiplies. And my kids have become preteens during this process, and it becomes very emotional knowing that you don't get to go play in that universe anymore.
In season 5, you directed the season premiere episode Red Directive, which is what you're entering for Emmy consideration. There are a few big action set pieces in that one. What is the process in general of building those kinds of visual effects heavy scenes? Like, where does the process start?
Oh, well, the process is about 30 to 35 week process on Star Trek, because everything is world building. We can't go to Home Depot. You can't go to a location. Everywhere you go, or every scene that you try to exist in has to be built from scratch. So, if you take something like the Sandrunner sequence, 35 weeks out, we got the script, working with the writers on how to possibly plus up a particular action sequence and make it be an extension of what that particular character is going through. And in that case, with the Sandrunner sequence, it's basically like a snowmobile that is running on sand, and it's environmentally conscious, so it runs on sand. And it just plows through at 200 miles per hour. So we put it on a gimbal, and you put it up on the VR wall. And there's an incredible amount of testing that goes to syncing what the gimbal is doing with the VR wall. And then one day you get to shoot it. And so it's a quite detailed process. It's a total collaboration amongst all the teams. Lots of concept art, lots of testing of the technology, lots of inventing of new technology, because some of that stuff just hasn't been done yet. Until one day you arrive on set and you hope it works. Usually it does.
And when you look at something in a script like, two starships using their shields against an avalanche, uh, do you ever think like, what are you doing to me? Like, I have to figure this out, how this works. And is there ever, challenges like that?
Yeah, when I read something like that in the script, I actually get really excited because, after 5 seasons, what are you going to do next? Like, how are we going to keep ourselves on our toes? How are we going to be excited to keep going? And it's challenges like that that keep things fresh. And you just go through and you break down first, at least for me, the emotion. What are we trying to feel here as an audience member? And then you get into the technical of, okay, exactly how are we going to do this? What does this look like? And I go through and with the script analysis for that particular scene, go through and shot list it, go through and storyboard it. And then I get together with my team, special effects, Darcy Callahan, and visual effects, Jason Zimmerman, and my DP, Phil Lanyon. And we go through, okay, this is the frame that I'm looking for. What's the best way to achieve this? How are we gonna maximize spectacular effect and spectacular, really hit the emotion of what's going on here in that scene. So I when I see like that, I get excited. When I see stuff like that, I get excited, because it's something new and something fresh and something that keeps us on our toes.
And on a show that balances sometimes a lot of major action with intimate character moments, how do you balance as a director the tone of a show to make sure it's sort of grounded in that emotional reality?
Well, yeah, it's a tricky thing, and our primary, at least I feel my primary responsibility as a director is to capture what's happening on the screen in the most emotional possible way. I just believe in emotional based direction. And you got an action sequence like you've seen in that premiere episode, and the camera's very frenetic. It's handheld. It's exploring. It's aggressive. It's feeling what the characters are feeling and going through. And then when you stop down and have a scene like we had with Burnham and Book right after the Sandrunner sequence, where they're just connecting intimately, then the camera slows down and it's no longer handheld. It's on dollies, or it's on Steadicam, or it's on a crane, and it's moving very carefully and being very precious with the moment. And you're also talking with the actors to slow down and not be afraid of slowing down the pace, and be open to unpacking what's really happening in that scene. And so the script is a wonderful guide, and that particular one for 501 is written by Michelle Paradise. And when you have scripts that are that good, it makes the directing, I think, a lot easier as far as figuring out where to be in particular moments.
And do you ever run into like budget constraints when you have to, where you have to improvise or pull back on certain scenes or effects, or like how resourceful do you have to be?
Yeah, I think it's funny. The more money you have, and CBS gives us and Paramount gives us unbelievable resources to do what we do. It's never enough, right? Our appetite creatively at artists always wants a little bit more. And yeah, what you find is, the first iteration of what my vision is we can't afford it, and so okay, you got to compromise and bring it down. But then as the different teams come on, different departments, they realize, oh, we need this and we need that. Oh, that's more money. Okay, so let's compromise and bring it down a little bit further. Or let's find a different way to go about doing it. And I think we've become pretty adept over time as a group, kind of understanding, okay, this is the process, but this is what we have to keep on screen in order to keep it spectacular. And you just kind of feel it out. And sometimes you don't get everything you want. Most of the time you don't get everything you want, but hopefully what's left by the end of that process is something everybody can still enjoy.
The episode you directed brings back David Cronenberg as Dr. Kovich, who sends the Discovery crew on its mysterious mission. As a director, what's it like working with the performance of a director like Cronenberg? Does he still wear his director hat a little bit, even when he's acting, or are you working strictly with an actor when you're working with him?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, working with Cronenberg was a fascinating experience, particularly the night before the morning I was going to work with him. I had no idea what I was going to be getting into. And because I have obviously an immense amount of respect for him. And I walked on set, and he's an actor. He is in actor mode. I am dealing with an actor. Not once did he come up and oh, you know what? Actually, he did. Yeah, there was a time when we were shooting on the Federation HQ bridge, a two-story set, and we had this piece of equipment on the camera that was called an M7, and it's this head that rotates around continuously if you want it to. And we had this shot with one of his co-stars where the camera pushed up and rotated around and then came back. And he came over to behind the monitors, which is where he's never been before. And he goes, "What's this piece of equipment here?" And I told him, and he said, "Why hasn't it been used on me?" And I looked at, and then, but he was totally joking, you know, and we were just kind of cracking up, and then we just talked shop for a little bit. I think my only regret working with him was that I didn't get to pick his brain more, because there's a lot going on in there that I think just would have been invaluable to learn from.
And as an executive producer of the show, in addition to being a director, like how much do you collaborate with the other directors on the show? Like, how closely do you work with them? What's that collaboration?
Well, I try to be their guardian angel. You know, I try to, you know, when you, particularly your first time coming in to do a Trek episode, you've got, you know, what, 50, 75 years of history. And then you've got the history of Star Trek Discovery, which is its own thing. And then we jumped into the future. So there's a lot. And you know, we have a really wide and large box by which the directors can play in, whether it be an emotional box or just toys as far as equipment that they can use. And my job is really to encourage them to find their own unique voice in that universe, to be the best that they can be, to solve problems that may come up, to essentially be there to allow them to create the best possible episode that they can. And it's wonderful being in that position for me, because it's very rare as a director, before I started doing this, that I got the opportunity to watch and study other directors this closely, and to pick certain things that I think they do really well, and our directors do a lot of things really, really well, and learn from those things and add them as part of my repertoire. And so, yeah, so I always look at my job as an executive producer, as the producer director on the show, as being the guardian angel. And also I like to learn a little bit of, you know, what they're up to.
Well, congratulations on your work on the show, and on 5 great seasons. And thank you so much for talking with me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here for our Meet the Experts TV Directors panel. I'm joined by David Paul Meyer from The Daily Show, Luke Korem from Milli Vanilli, Randy Zisk from Mr. Monk's Last Case, and Olatunde Osunsanmi from Star Trek Discovery. Well, first off, you know, just looking at your work as a whole and your job up to this point, what's your favorite part of the directing process? Start with Olatunde.
Oh, yeah, my favorite part is just seeing the finished product, and playing it in front of an audience, whether you know, that be a theatrical experience, or whether it be a television experience and you're following the reaction online. You know, how does it make people feel? And you know, there's this wonderful thing I think that happens through the process, whereby the audience and myself seem to end up on the same page, and seem to understand each other. And it's that understanding that I think is pretty special.
Randy?
I think my favorite part is probably day one of filming. You know, we as we prep these things, and sometimes the preps are fairly long, you start to get really ready to shoot. You're really excited to shoot. I'm sure everyone feels the same way. There's a little bit of, you know, your nerves are like, how's it gonna start out? How's it gonna work? And when we finally get to that last day of prep and we wake up the next morning and start filming, to me, that's probably the most exciting part. And then it's off to the races from there.
David?
I would say for me, just because we're doing episodes all the time, like I think we're doing 150 this year, you start to really gravitate, just for me, towards the people that you're with every day. So for me, it's really about that. Like I love working with our crew, uh, our director's team, stage manager, associate director, uh, and just the relationships we build, as well as the people like the writers and the producers. I would say just that process of working together, and then the show being done at the end of the day, just kind of sitting around in our postmortem, being like, all right, same thing tomorrow, and we're back. So yeah, I just think those relationships over time are what you really start to connect with, since we're with each other so much all day in, day out.
And Luke?
I think for me, it's finding those unexpected moments, whether it be in production or in the edit, where in documentary you have an idea where the story might go, but you're always surprised by what someone says. Or in the edit, you come in and your editor has done something that you hadn't imagined, and you have those moments of magic where you go, "Oh my God, like that just took it up another level," and you can imagine how the audience is going to receive that. And that's what I love about directing, is like you have an idea and a vision, but like it's the magic that you find when you're making it that makes it so great.
Now, in addition to of course, loving your jobs, I'm sure there are aspects of every job that are like difficult or challenging, or what would you say is the least favorite aspect of directing, or the hardest part? Would you say, David?
Oh, yeah, maybe hardest, right? I mean, look, we comment on the news. We're kind of like a satirical newspaper every day that's on television, and the news is tough right now. So I would say it's really hard, and it's also, we're supposed to make jokes about things. So I would say it's hard to navigate those news stories. And even though you definitely enjoy doing it, yeah, I mean, look, not to be too dark, but it's grim out there. So, but we're plugging along, and I think it's always amazing to see how people here at the show can thread that needle, so to speak, tough times, and still making people laugh.
Luke?
I think the hardest part, it's also one of the most rewarding parts is condensing a story, like in a feature or so, or an episode, condensing it all into a 90-minute or 1 hour, and like keeping that great narrative shape. It's always that is always like the hardest part. That's why we're filmmakers, but like sometimes that can be a little maddening and stressful, especially when you're looking at the cards and you're going, that was supposed to work, why is that not working, what are we missing? And but I think we love our job so much, so like we love and hate that. So.
Randy?
I understand what Luke's saying, and I agree. I mean, we love all parts of making the projects, but I would say probably the most challenging for me is the schedule, and always trying to to get as much into that schedule as we can. I never want to tell the writer we can't do this scene, or we can't do this scene, or this is too big, or whatever. So it's constantly balancing how much can we put into the number of days that we have to shoot, and how do we make it look as good as we can. So it's the board, and putting all those pieces together to get the most out of it.
Yeah, that's it right there for me, is time and money in that schedule.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much you have or how little you have. It always seems like it's the same problem, and you want it to be great. Everybody wants it to be great, and you want to deliver for the writers, right? And you want to deliver for the other producers. You want to deliver for the fans. But there are these physical realities that exist, that do prevent certain things, and just figuring out creative ways, and then having to do it over and over again until you get to that first day of shooting. So I always feel like that first day of shooting can't come fast enough, because I feel like less problems can come up, or obstacles can come up, if I can just get there to that first day. But yeah, I think I totally agree. I think the schedule and time and money is the thing for me that is the least. I have the least appetite to have to deal with, to want to deal with.
And in your work as filmmakers and directors and storytellers, all in your own unique ways, is there a dream project that you would love to make, or something you'd love to work on if you had a blank check and just unlimited resources? Is there a dream project that you have in mind, Randy?
It's a great question. I mean, there's always projects that are, to me at least, that are personal stories that I've always wanted to tell. I think that just something that for me lands with heart and with humor, because I love, both arenas so much. I mean, there's not a specific one that comes to mind, but it would definitely be something that I felt really attached to, really close to, and passionate about, because I think, and I think we all agree that what the stories we're most passionate about come off the best and have the strongest through line. So for me, it'd be something that really had either experienced or been around or moved me in a way that I wanted to tell that story.
Luke?
I mean, I've got like a slew of ideas that are like on my board. But like Hulk Hogan, for instance, like Hulk, if you watch this, maybe people hit me up because I think you have a great story. Look, I think there's actually I've been wanting to dive into the scripted side of things, and there's a true life story of these brothers, Shaquille and Shaquem Griffin, who are identical twins, and one is born with only one hand, and they make it to the NFL together, and it's called Inseparable. And I'm working with those guys and their agents, and I'm putting together the script right now. And I think that could be something that would be an incredible story. And so I've always wanted to transition, and I feel like not transition, but kind of be multi-tooled in what I do. And so I'm looking at doing that as my first narrative.
Olatunde?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you can sign me up for anything alien sci-fi, And I know what you're thinking. Does Star Trek, doesn't he have enough of that, But I love alien sci-fi. I love what I love about it is it makes you question what it is to be human and what that actually means. Are we alone? Are we and if we're not alone, are we similar? Are our souls similar? And there's so many questions and so many different ways you can go with alien sci-fi. So you got an alien sci-fi project, sign me up. I'd love to look at it.
David?
Yeah, probably I relate a lot to what Randy was saying about something that I have a personal connection to. And I was thinking about, soccer's just been really big in my life lately. Like, I played it growing up, and now all my kids play it. I'm coaching my daughter's team, so we watch soccer all the time at our house. So I think some stories from the past that with soccer that have kind of inspired me, and it's just an interesting sport in terms of the world, but then how it's a little differently accepted in America, I think. So some personal story from that maybe with soccer. So if you got a soccer movie, look me up. I'll take a break from the Daily Show for it. If they let me out of here.
And if you couldn't be directors, is there another job you'd like to have on a film or TV set, or a road that you might have gone down? If things had gone differently, Luke?
Producing. Yeah, I love producing. I love getting projects like greenlit, like it's such a fight. It's such, but it just, the excitement and the thrill of having a kernel of an idea, whether it's yours or someone that brings it to you, and then it actually coming to fruition. I love that part of it. And you get to work with so many people, so producing, 100%, I would just do that.
Olatunde?
I probably want to be a journalist. Yeah, just track down a story that's important to me. Find out the truth about it, share it with the world. I think there's a lot to be said for that, and how it helps keep multiple, different parts of our society honest. Yeah, I think if I weren't doing what I'm doing now, I'd pursue journalism in some facet or another.
David?
Well, I was always really interested in cinematography, like studied at school, but never really did it practically on a set. And I think, I don't know, cinematographers are cool. Like first of all, they're always like the coolest ones on set, and it's come off to me at least. So, but not just to be cool, to just really dive into that world. I'm just blown away. So.
And Randy?
I would probably do something in the sports world. I kind of grew up in that world. I wasn't good enough to play it at the next level, but maybe sports reporting or one of the sports shows, one of those kinds of things. I do something in sports. I also, like David, was big into soccer and baseball, and it'd be something in sports probably.
And if you look out at the world of directors, filmmakers, storytellers coming up in this industry, do you have any advice you would give them, or advice you wish you had gotten, something you wish you had known coming into it?
Oh yeah, I would probably say don't give up. Everybody's coming from a different their own different lived experiences to want to direct, and it's hard, and you just have to continue to believe in yourself and freaking go for it, and um, and as corny as it sounds, do your best to try and work harder than everybody else, because there's a lot of talent out there. I think I do find the ones who seem to be consistent have a particular work ethic that is just insane. And so yeah, I would say don't give up. You can do it. Continue to believe in yourself, and try and surround yourself with high achievers and people who can people who aren't going to tear you down, people who are going to be supportive and continue to encourage you.
Randy?
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, not to give up, because there's so many times along the way that I'm sure all of us could say we could have turned back, we could have moved on to something else, and we've been told so many times how hard it is and how difficult the business we're getting into. But it's a great answer. Don't give up. Just work through it. And then when you get a chance to direct, I think it's so important that you come into it with a point of view, and you come into it, each scene you direct or each show you direct, to really with the story that you want to tell, and the story that when you read the script, you really break down the script to see what the moments are in the script and what that point of view is, and make sure that it comes across when you film it, because it takes a lot of pieces and it takes a lot of work, but when you do find something that lands, to make sure that you capture it and then you put it together that way.
David?
I would say to just be open to where your career takes you. Like when I started, I guess, set out to be a director, where I am now was not anywhere in the plan for me. It's not really what I studied at school, and I just didn't think that I would end up doing this. But when opportunities present themselves, I would just kind of jump on them, and it's what led me to meeting Trevor Noah in South Africa like 16 years ago. And like the ride that I've been on with that guy is what brought me here to the show. And now John's here. I was telling Randy, I was watching John when I was a freshman in college when he started at the show. So, it was not necessarily in the plan, but whatever the opportunity was presented to me, it was like, I'm going to approach this was, hard work. What Olatunde was talking about with your work ethic, no matter what that job is, no matter what the gig is that you're doing, put everything into it, because you never know like what the next thing will be. And essentially what you're doing on that one is what gets you into the next one, and just being open to where it takes you.
And Luke?
I'm just going to combine both of what y'all have already said. I mean, in terms of don't giving up, I named my small production company Keep On Running for that exact reason, and remind me never to give up. And in terms of where your career takes you. I remember when I started, there was a story that came about, and I never thought I'd make a documentary, but I was like, I want to make a documentary, and that would be like my first film to make. And I asked an older filmmaker, what do you think? And he said, don't make documentaries, it'll ruin your career. And so much, you know, because it wasn't cool or popular at the time. And it's like, so watch where you get advice from, you know, and go with your intuition and where your passion is, because that's really what's going to carry you through. And a lot of people are making it up as they go, and they're always following other people. So like, if you do that, you're, you know, you won't really thrive and find what you're great at.
Well, I want to congratulate all four of you for the work you've done. All your projects are so different from each other. So it's always a pleasure to hear from such a wide range of points of view on the industry and on the particular behind the camera work that you all do. So thank you so much for talking with me. It's been a pleasure.
This has been great.
Having us.
Guys, thanks. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you all.